Some whispers fade with time, but some never stop calling.
Wani-chan, it's cold down here.
Welcome to Echoes of Fear. Hokkaido, 1987, the cicadas were the first to notice. On the morning of August 12th, the villagers of Shizukamura awoke to an unnatural quiet. The relentless summer hum of cicadas, a sound as familiar as breath, had vanished. The air hung heavy, thick with the stench of rotting pine and wet soil. Farmers paused in their fields, their skin prickling at the silence. Dogs cowered under porches, whining. Only the Himawari family, whose ancestral home bordered the cursed forest, heard the new sound that slithered into the void, a child's laughter echoing from the direction of the old well. By noon, 6-year-old Mei Himawari was declared missing. Her older sister, 14-year-old Aiko, stood motionless as villagers combed the woods. Her hands were caked in black mud, her eyes vacant.
She went to the drowning tree,
Aiko whispered, pointing to the ancient oak, whose gnarled roots drank from a murky pond. Divers searched the water for days but found nothing. No body, no clothing, not even a ripple. That night, Aiko's father burned Mei's belongings in the yard. Her mother clawed at her own throat, screaming that something was inside her, until her husband locked her in the shed. Aiko watched silently, her stained hands trembling as the flames consumed Mei's stuffed rabbit, its glass eyes melting into the embers. The next morning, the villagers found the shed empty. Aiko's mother was discovered 3 days later, her body floating in the pond beneath the drowning tree. Her lungs were filled with silt, her mouth stretched in a smile. The cicadas never returned to Shizukamura. Aiko Himawari hated the rain. It fell in needles as her taxi wound up the mountain road to Shizukamura, the village she'd sworn never to revisit. 30 years had passed since Mei's disappearance, yet the rain felt the same, cold, relentless, as if the sky sought to drown the earth. Her father's funeral summons had arrived that morning, the note scrawled in a shaky hand. Aiko, come home. She's in the walls now. The driver, an old man with yellowed teeth and a missing pinky finger, eyed her in the rearview mirror.
You're the Himawari girl, aren't you? The one whose sister drowned?
She didn't drown. There was no body.
The man's knuckles whitened on the wheel.
No, only the Yurei leave no bodies.
He gestured to the amulet dangling from his mirror, a frayed omamori charm stained with mold.
They say your sister's ghost still pulls children into the drowning tree. Last year, a hiker vanished. They found his camera floating in the pond. The photos...
He trailed off, swallowing hard. Aiko turned to the window. The trees blurred into a smudge of green and grey. She's in the walls now. The words throbbed in her skull. The tires crunched over pine needles as they pulled up to the Himawari estate. The house loomed, a skeletal relic of warped wood and torn paper screens. Red lanterns glowed dimly in the garden, their light bleeding into the fog. Aiko's chest tightened. The last time she'd stood here, her mother's screams had still been echoing from the shed. The front door creaked open before she knocked. A gaunt woman in a stained nurse's uniform stood in the threshold, her smile stretching too wide for her gaunt face.
Welcome home, Iku-san. Your father is waiting in the Butsuden room.
Aiko froze. The household Buddhist altar had been sealed shut after May's disappearance. Her father called it a doorway for hungry ghosts. The nurse thrust a crumpled page into Aiko's hand. The paper was waterlogged, the childish scrawl blurred.
Odd-san, the well is cold. Why won't Aiko play with me?
Aiko dropped the note. The handwriting was May's. The Butsudan room reeked of mildew and incense. Aiko's father knelt before the altar, his back hunched, hair snow white. The altar doors hung open, revealing photos of the dead. Aiko's mother, suicide, 1991. Her grandparents, drowned in the pond, 1964. And May, forever 6, her smile half obscured by water stains.
You shouldn't have opened the altar.
Aiko said. Her father didn't turn.
She asked me to, Mei-chan. She's been lonely.
His voice cracked.
You shouldn't have lied, Aiko. You shouldn't have said you didn't push her.
Aiko's breath hitched. He knows. Rain drummed the roof. Somewhere in the house, a faucet dripped. Plink, plink, plink.
I didn't push her.
Aiko whispered.
She fell. It was an accident.
Her father turned slowly. His eyes were gone, empty sockets sewn shut with black thread.
Liar. You've always been lying. Now she's coming to carve the truth out of you.
Aiko stumbled back. The photos on the altar wept black fluid. May's portrait rippled, her smile twisting into a drowned scream. The nurse's voice echoed down the hall.
Aiko says, Mei-chan wants to show you the well.
The well stood at the forest's edge, its stones slick with moss. Aiko's flashlight trembled in her hand as she peered into the abyss. The nurse had vanished, leaving only a trail of wet footprints.
Wani-chan.
Aiko froze. The voice was May's, high-pitched, playful, echoing from the depths.
You promised we'd play forever.
I'm sorry.
Aiko choked.
I didn't mean to.
A skeletal hand shot from the well, grasping her wrist. Aiko screamed as the rotted flesh sloughed off the bones, revealing tiny fingers adorned with a butterfly hair clip. May's favorite.
Liar.
The voice gurgled.
You pushed me. You wanted me gone.
Aiko wrenched free and fled, the laughter chasing her through the trees. The next morning, Aiko visited the village shrine. The priest, an old man with milky eyes, refused to meet her gaze.
The drowning tree feeds on regret.
He muttered, scrubbing mold from a statue of Jizo.
Your family's sins poisoned its roots. Now the Yurei hungers.
How do I stop it?
Aiko demanded. The priest hesitated.
A life for a life. The tree demands a sacrifice.
As Aiko left, she spotted the taxi driver's body floating in a rain puddle. His lungs bulged with pond water, his face frozen in terror. At dusk, Aiko returned to the drowning tree, May's bones clutched to her chest. The ghost awaited her, a skeletal figure with hair like wet ink, mouth gaping into a void.
Wani-chan.
May crooned.
You'll never leave me again.
Aiko hurled the bones into the pond. The water boiled. Skeletal hands erupted, dragging May under. The cicadas' screams returned, deafening. As Aiko fled, her taxi passed the pond. In the rearview mirror, May waved from the water, wearing Aiko's face. Weeks later, Tokyo News reported a woman's body was found in an apartment bathtub, lungs filled with black water. The landlord swore he heard cicadas singing before she died. In Shizukamura, the drowning tree blooms anew, its roots cradling, a small skeleton with a butterfly hair clip, and in the silence, the cicadas feast. The drowning tree looms, its roots cradling something beneath the soil. The cicadas scream, then silence. A shadow moves just beyond the frame. Some secrets are buried, but the dead remember. She's still waiting. Subscribe before she finds you first.